and welcome to the CDO Magazine series of interviews. I'm Jason Masker, Field CTO with Stratascale, and we're participating with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Niresh Rajah, Managing Director, Head of Data, RegTech, and Digital Advisor Practice at Grant Thornton. Niresh, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Jason.
So, Niresh, you and Grant Thornton have clearly been in a position to make some key observations here. When it comes to helping clients solve some of these challenges, what are some of the things you could share with us there? What are some of the greatest, the biggest ways that Grant Thornton is helping to address that?
Yeah, I think we've been very focused, Jason, in terms of making sure that we put our client first, in terms of understanding their requirements really clearly, and making sure that we become a trusted partner to our clients. So that's the mentality, that's the ethos that we've created in terms of that. And if we break that into then how we helping clients, that trusted advisor means that we are providing strategic advice around data. So we've helped a large retail bank with a data strategy rollout to operationalize the data strategy. And we looked at actually how do they become more digitalized with their customer sets across the business banking and corporate banking and retail banking part of it, to say how do you roll that out to actually create more value for end businesses and then the customers of those businesses by actually looking at data strategy linked to digitalization. And that's an exciting piece of work. Another area we're helping is actually a lot of chief data officers are coming to us to say, you've managed to hire some great talent. Can you actually help us? You talked about data management. You asked about data management. Can you help us put in place good data management? So we're working with a large asset manager, a large investment bank in terms of helping them with actually putting in great data management around critical data elements, solving their data quality issues. But also linked to that is actually the customer problems around vulnerability or customer complaints or regulation. The third area we're helping our clients is actually around data platforms. A lot of our clients actually want to create data platforms, but they're looking for support from our data engineering capability and data science capabilities and cloud capabilities to say, how can you actually create this type of data platforms? So as I mentioned, we supported a large global asset manager with actually an ESG data platform and an ESG data screener, which was great for us to be involved in such an exciting project. The other areas we've been involved, we're working with a global mining organization in terms of data catalog tooling, which is linked to master data management, data quality tooling, and creating a data fabric for that organization, which has been huge for them in terms of what their 3-year plan is in terms of using data to actually achieve their strategy. And then a couple of other projects I probably want to articulate is really using turning unstructured data to structured data to be able to solve real life problems for our clients. Again, in kind of this was in a pharmaceutical context. So we've been working in all aspects or all areas of data, but the heart of that is we're not a system implementer. We're not a big organization looking to put multiple individuals into a project. We're here, we want to be a trusted advisor for our clients. How can we help them be successful?
What advice would you have to organizations aspiring to be more data-driven and build up their data proficiencies, competencies?
Sure, and that's a really difficult question because it unfortunately changes from organization to organization. What we see as being important is that data sometimes gets very confused with technology, and they're totally different in terms of what they are around disciplines and competency areas. And unfortunately, some individuals, some data practitioners, they get so caught up and excited and passionate about data, they use terminology which actually closes the door to wider stakeholders and senior stakeholders who need to be there. So the first part about being data-driven is literacy, data literacy, is how does one simplify the language and talk about benefits and outcomes and how it's solving real-world problems for their stakeholders and their stakeholders and employees, not talk about data quality, data governance. And I'm fortunate to be an advisor to a number of chief data officers, and I go to their boards to give an external viewpoint. And I always have this slide I use, which is about an iceberg with a sea level, above the sea level, and you've got the iceberg above the sea level, and all that you talk about is outcomes in terms of customers, innovation, whichever areas of ESG or aspects the client's strategy or the customer strategy is important. Below the sea level, you've got all the things like data management and governance and quality and tooling and architecture and reference data, all this other stuff. The point I'm making there is the end to increase data literacy and buy-in from exec. They don't need to know the underlying detail in terms of that. Those are actually aspects that support the viewpoint. The key is how do you actually turn the language to how data is helping drive business strategy at the top level. So I think that's, I'm sorry, that was quite a long-winded answer in terms of your short question, but that one way in terms of actually driving data. The second is, and I was very fortunate to be working for a fantastic CEO at one of my previous organizations, and he was fabulously data-driven in terms of decision-making. And the way that he did that was actually every decision was made on what's the data and how do you get to the value of data. So if you're going to make a decision on being in a business, show me the number of customers, show me the revenue, show me customer propensity, et cetera, et cetera. So we always, anytime I went into the executive and exco conversation, we knew that we needed to give a data-driven viewpoint for a decision to be made. That positioning he created around the executive table, and they've become, all the exco members have become leaders in their own right, have then become data-driven. So I think the second part is having a CEO who actually, and exec team, who actually make decisions based on data, not instinct and gut, and there's a viewpoint. The third aspect of being data-driven is the organization has to show that it means when it says it's data-driven. So coming back to the point around data-driven decision-making, our decisions based on data, and when, if you look at annual statements and we look at the statements that are put out, how much of those statements are made based on data? So you look back at the financial and non-financial information to say, is their strategy based on something that they can tie to, either industry-wide or in their own organization? And sadly, 80% of the time, you read an annual report and the strategy is not linked to a data-driven decision-making of why they're selecting that strategy. It's based on hunch, instinct, or getting a top-tier strategy consulting firm to map out without. So I think that third part is you've got to change the behaviors and the viewpoint. And the final one is actually teaching data to everybody in the organization. And what I mean teaching is actually saying, look, you don't need to be a data scientist or be a proficient in Python, but how do you actually have data literacy, and how do you make decisions based on data? And what does that look like? And using that as a mechanism for everybody in the organization to have some data literacy, understanding how to make decisions. So I think that's how I've seen organizations who are successful trying to be data-driven and building, the future with data.
That's terrific. Thank you for your time today, Niresh. This is a great conversation. Please visit us at cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.